People are actually here.
Hey, Jim, it's Ed.
Let me make sure there's everybody in my room knows. A bunch of people collected there.
So I'm gonna limit my time here. I haven't received an official response, so I've been waiting now for I don't know, several days for an official response. I'm looking forward to an official response to the proposal that I put forward. Right now we are in a situation where the proposal I put forward has expired, and my next steps and my current default position is that we will now seek a coin-based preferences expression from investors, and if that fails, we go to seeking a refund.
Understood. Thank you for the introduction, Greg. So, to the point of the offer, as mentioned, I was looking to provide the document, the PDF, that basically confirms that I will be supporting an investment of $2.1 million that is to be made by Scenario Ltd. To complement an $8 million investment that can be made by Otto or any other VC or entity into the RChain. Now, as I understand it, that was basically the next step of negotiations, which is the due diligence of the proposal that was put forward. I believe that should be sort of the right response by Scenario Ltd. And as an investor, I feel that will be the correct way of interrogating the proposal.
Actually, so I need to clarify. So to the point, DOR has been apprised since August of the requirements of the investment from Auto Capital. So the requirements are, as I've stated several times now, and the DOR has been aware of. So there has to be a proper budgeting, which indicates a clear indication, a clear signal to fund RChain, as we have demonstrated quite clearly to the community, to everyone's satisfaction. The proposal put forward by Scenario does not do that. So now so now if I go to the investor and they look at the public record from Scenario, they will see that Scenario does not intend to fund RChain. So they have already put the kibosh on that. Additionally, let me finish. I will be clear.
Yeah, as always, yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. Additionally, the requirement was for a proper governance structure. The way to rectify the kibosh with the existing proposal is to come back with a proper budgeting proposal, and I've told you what the ranges are for proper budgeting, and a consent to at least an odd number member board. And that will rectify that, and with consent to those things, I can go back to Auto and negotiate for the investment. Without those things, it is tantamount to having destroyed that investment opportunity. So I have been super clear about this, and there does not need to be additional interrogation of this of these investments, because DOR was in on the calls He's been in on every negotiation. I've made sure that Dor was aware of this. So what we are seeing here is a clear decision to destroy that investment opportunity in order to maintain control.
Understood. So as I perceive it, there is a chicken and egg issue where basically Scenario should not be committing to an investment opportunity without securing the $8 million required to complete RChain's runway. And on the other hand, the $8 million required to complete RChain's runway cannot be secured without Scenario putting forward the budgeting and governance proposal.
So Scenario does not have the funds to get to production-ready code.
That's a separate discussion. I'm just summarizing this.
I need
the proposal.
No, right. So I'm investigating the hypothesis of the chicken and egg. Right. So the hypothesis of the chicken and egg is pretty straightforward. The claim is that you could do anything to get to production-ready code for less than that, and we all know. Everyone here knows that that's
I'm not making that claim. Again, Greg, we're specifically discussing the RChain and the RChain proposal. This means nothing with regards to anything else.
It does. And so...
I'm sorry, so not as far as I'm concerned. Let's not do that, please.
So
I'm discussing specifically the RChain.
I am placing the RChain proposal in the context so that the terms of the RChain proposal are understood clearly. There will be deliverables within the budget that allow us to get to additional funding events. That's the exact same path that Scenario has to follow for any proposal that they take. So you cannot say that RChain is risky and other proposals are not, because any proposal held up against the RChain proposal will be facing the same sort of...
That's a very categorical statement, basically saying that any proposal will behave in the exact same way from a risk perspective as an RChain proposal. I find that statement very categorical and like very concrete. I don't think that reality behaves that way. Otherwise, let's just agree.
I will be happy to if you field even a single alternative right now to hold it up against these to do the analysis.
I cannot do that.
Because we did the analysis inside Scenario and we came to this event. We did the analysis and we came to the conclusions that supported the RChain decisions. And that's why we sold it to investors.
I have seen no other proposal.
No proposal, nothing to hold up, and I can back up the alternatives.
And I accept it. I'm just stating that the statement that you've made, where the RChain proposal is the single legitimate proposal, and any other proposal would be just as risky. I don't think that's realistic, given the fact that it's the real world, and the real world usually offers a lot of alternatives to pretty much anything. That's my point of view. This is how I perceive reality. Okay.
So all I'm saying is you have no other proposal, and so now we're talking about significant risk. So without an alternative, the risk is much greater. And in particular, here's the risk: we have sold a particular proposal to investors. To investors, we said, here's the Scenario architecture. This is what we're going to do for you. And for this, investors gave us a lot of money. And the subsequent discussion amongst investors has produced more than enough evidence that this is in fact the case. So
yeah, I tend to agree. I will not argue. I'll just prefer to not argue the specificity of Scenario's promise, but I accept that some of the promises revolve around the RChain or what the RChain means in terms of what happens if it gets implemented. Fair enough. So this is the state currently of the proposal. Okay, so you're saying that the proposal is likely to be withdrawn and currently that's the due diligence basically cannot be completed because there isn't chicken and egg situation from a logical perspective, as far as I can see it. And perhaps maybe the scenario team later will make an official statement. Perhaps you will receive a response if it will be still on the table. Now, I would like to proceed to the second part, which is scenarios offer, which was also put on the table, which was not amended yet and has neither received a categorical response from yourself, whether it's accepted, rejected, or has to be modified.
No, it was actually, I did make the modifications, and the edit histories will show that I not only did I read and respond, but Door then marked them as resolved without asking me if they were resolved. And this is a part of the edit history of the document.
Excellent. So I suggest that you somehow make it official. I presume emailing that to Door and then iterating from there on that proposal would be the right thing to do.
So my proposal is the iteration on that proposal.
Excellent. So could you just make it, I guess, as official as you could by emailing and stating that, hey, this is the comments that I've made. These have to be addressed in order for the proposal to be acceptable.
I have already done that.
Excellent. Now,
that was done. That was done, by the way, what, 4 days ago now? So Door is quite, so in terms of the process, Door and yourself and everyone else has been very aware, and I've been reviewed all of these steps in public on multiple meetings. So in particular, after the meeting of Wednesday, we had another meeting on Friday in which I reviewed and held the two proposals side by side. I made it clear to everyone who was listening, and it is on tape and available on YouTube, that my proposal was the response to the first proposal, and constituted a more detailed commentary to the first proposal, having rejected the first proposal as essentially putting the kibosh on our potential for this much larger investment. Now, the next.
Understood. So I will make it sure that I will chase Door in order to have a proper official response to your comments.
Okay. So Andy, we've been attempting to chase Door down. Everyone in Slack and everywhere has been attempting.
I can chase Door down.
Okay, but this is we're kind of done chasing Door. Door has had multiple times to respond. So and this is a part of a 6-month-long process chasing Door down to get commitments to verbal and written statements. So and I would never have consented to the crowd sale had I not had those statements from Door.
Understood.
So now I'm out of time, and Scenario is out of time in terms of this process.
Understood.
So we are unless I see.
Greg, let's not make it a spectacle. We have just reviewed the state of both proposals. I would like to make a statement, if you may, please.
Go ahead.
So, as you may have noticed, Door as well as the Scenario team are not present at this meeting. I have put forward the request on behalf of myself and other significant investors and equity holders that the Scenario team abstain from today's call, as I feel myself and the rest of the investors are being used as leverage, held hostage in these negotiations as long as they attend. Now, Greg, I appreciate the difficulties of your personal position in these negotiations. You know perfectly well that I've negotiated with Door in the past as well. And the need for leverage in order to negotiate your position. These public negotiations, this reality TV, has destroyed millions in USD value for investors. Having said that, I would like to point out that the rest of the Scenario team, despite having over 40 people as an audience on yesterday's call, they have immediately left it without negotiating and pleading their case in your absence. I consider that to be a clear indicator that these theatrics, for lack of better word, are of unilateral interest. They have no interest of having those negotiations in public, and neither do we, the investors. And they have acted in very honorable and honorable way that they have left the meeting immediately after you did, and they did not plead their case, and could have possibly damaged your position or even after investors. And what I'm asking right now is for you to do the same, as I will be logging off. Thank you very much for your attention.
Just one point. Okay, we talked about doing AMP voting. Okay, there was a proposal on scenario consider it put in by Patrick McGuire. There's a document, which I'll put the link in here too, which is the beginning of a collaborative document on the process of getting the AMP vote of the community on Andy's proposal.
I guess for simplicity's sake, can someone please summarize what Andy just said? Because I really didn't understand it.
Basically, he said that he's left the table and that the scenario has left the table. That Door and the people who are supporting Door have left the table. His claim is that educating investors about the issues is holding investors hostage and holding their investment hostage. That's not my position, and I've been very clear about that. It is absolutely critical to me and to everyone that they are educated about what the issues are, that they understand what the issues are, that they are brought to light, so that there are no statements, categorical statements of non-performance or non-delivery that would damage the markets, which is, in my position, what damaged the markets. Moreover,
they just object to your refusal to have a private meeting.
And my refusal to have a private meeting is as follows. I have been engaged in 6 months of private meetings without success.
So now we're in a situation where you won't meet privately and they won't meet publicly.
If I meet privately, I have 6 months of evidence that nothing gets accomplished.
Nobody knows the future. You don't know what's going to happen at that meeting. And you can spare 15 minutes to find out.
Okay, fine. That's fair. I'm happy to meet for 15 minutes. That's a reasonable proposal. At this point, while I will take the meeting, I have a feeling that they are not going to take the meeting. I think that they have been step by step shoring up a legal position.
Well, then it's, then you showed that you were willing to negotiate in good faith, and it's their fault, not your fault.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, so absolutely, the meeting is a part of due diligence, and it's a part of making sure that the investors understand all of the positions and all of the information.
And Greg, just to be clear, as chief and the only other board member, you do have a fiduciary duty to the investors to make the information public, correct?
That's correct. It's absolutely a requirement to make sure that the investors are apprised of what's going on.
Right, but still, meetings in private sometimes work.
Again, I take your guidance, Jim, and I will make myself available for a private meeting for a period of 15 minutes.
So
I will set my availability up through and including any time until 11 o'clock
we have
Wednesday.
We have a 5,000 AMP bounty currently on the AMP voting. Please join the team and make it happen.
Greg, I have a question. that now that they have left the negotiation. What am I trying to say? I'm trying to say, okay, so if what is the possible futures going forward? Because it's like if you're shoring up for a legal battle, it's like I don't even understand where that can go in any capacity. I mean, I've heard this from multiple parties that a legal battle would first of all eat up all the funding from the crowd sale. Is that true, or could you not spend those funds? It's just so confusing.
I confess I'm with you. I don't understand how they could possibly take this position, and it seems to me that rather than go through the steps that we talked about, so everyone was apprised, there's tons of evidence here, we did a ton of preparation. The steps were hang on one second. I'm going to take a look at the work that was done this morning. Hang on one second here.
Are you going to record?
Sure, 1 second. Okay. And then we have, and this is the kind of stuff that's really fun and enjoyable. So, whoops, sorry, let me. Okay. All right. So Mike Stay and I, who are collaborators on the proof of soundness of the Rolang type system, had a really very, very productive session today. We are submitting a paper to LIX in which we describe some of the types So these would be types you put on smart contracts in the Rolang, saying we were describing types.
Greg, can I interrupt you for 1 second? Please give me the ability to record in your room, and please zoom in on your screen.
Will do. Hang on a second. I'm going to stop share. Is it manage participants? And then I go. Let's see. Allow record. Cool. All right. So I'm basically just having some fun to relax and blow off the tension from the previous meeting. So what I'm describing here is a part of the system that goes into the Rolang contracts. And this is
Share your screen, Greg. Share your screen, bro.
I'm going to, 1 second. Okay, so I know that a lot of people won't necessarily follow the math, so I'm going to unpack this so that everyone can understand how it relates to things that are important. So one of the most important things when you have, if we imagine the success of a large-scale contracting system like RChain, is that people will introduce contracts, and they will introduce them in a way that they're not familiar, that are dependent, just like today when you're using components on GitHub, right? So a lot of people use open source components, and a lot of people use running web services as a part of a service that they provide. And they stitch them together without really being aware of the long dependency chains. That's one of the reasons that licensing for open source is so difficult, because you may have a component that has one license that depends upon a component which has another license that depends upon a component that has another license, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there are these long. So when you're talking about this kind of free use of contracts in the wild, where there are all kinds of dependencies, one of the things that can happen is that you may have a contract A that depends on a message from B before it can get started, and B depends upon a message from C before it can get started, and so on, so on, so on, so on, which depends on the contract Z, which then depends upon A, right? So you have a deadly embrace. In other words, you complete a cycle. So you wire this up, and unbeknownst to you, because you can't see it, there's a cycle of dependencies within the contracts that you're wiring up, and there's going to be no progress made. So what you want to be able to do in this kind of setting is to catch this up front. You want to be able to catch this at the time that you're wiring up contracts to be dependent upon each other in some way. And one of the things that's really important is to be able to do this in terms of the contract code itself. And once we're talking about contract code, since the code itself is on the blockchain, then you have a chain of custody to the thing that is running. And as a result, the kinds of guarantees that we can provide will be guaranteed without sort of a bait and switch at the end, where someone provides code that type checks and then later they run code that doesn't type check. So because of the properties of blockchain, we get this level of security that was heretofore not possible. So what Mike and I were doing was looking at this. Let me just stop here and make sure everyone understood. You can wire up contracts in a way that they can end up with chains of dependency that don't that are deadlocked effectively. A depends on B, B depends on C, yada yada yada, which finally depends on A, and there's no progress that can ever be made. And you want to be able.
That was the one of the most common issues that we faced at Barclays Capital, where some black swan event caused a deadlock.
Yeah. And
it was very difficult to determine how to fix it.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. All right. So so the thing is, you want to be able to provide this. So we're talking about, so the Rolang language for contracts provides a notion of behavioral types, which are an extension of the kind of rich typing that you find in languages like Scala and Haskell and Java and F# and OCaml and other kinds of systems. So and what those types provide is both a view of how the contracts operate, not just whether or not the data that they're providing is of a certain shape at an input-output location, but rather the contract itself behaves according to a certain recipe and or constraints on the order of actions, and also that the contract has a kind of internal shape. All right, and so that's actually a new idea. So let's
Know how to be, but if you don't get at least the 70%, you fail the class.
Hello, there's someone talking someone over. Could they mute? Could they mute?
67.
Hello.
Greg, if you just go back and make me co-host, I can take control of admin in the room if you want.
Okay, I'll do that. 1 second. So, okay, done. All right. So so what we want to do is to discuss the kind of types that make this forcing responsiveness to be forcing responsiveness of contracts that are made of many contracts. So we can talk about this idea of a little responsive formula, and that's always with respect to a namespace. So this is really important because namespaces are at the core of our sharding solution for RChain. So what we say, so this little formula here that says quote fee says it describes programmatically the addresses or channels that a particular contract is willing to communicate on. So little responsive with respect to a particular namespace says that there's some address in that namespace such that the contract is willing to interact, in particular will listen to requests for information at that address, and then go back to being responsive. So it's always possible for it to talk to the outside world. So that's one kind of responsiveness, but what it doesn't say is there might be internal deadlocks. So the contract itself is always able to talk to the outside world. But internally, there are bits and pieces of it that are locked up and not making any progress. So an example of this might be that you've got a server that has a queue where clients are depositing requests. So the clients just keep depositing requests and the queue is building up and building up and building up. So it's always responsive. It's always taking new requests at the queue, right? And the queue is just getting larger and larger and larger. But internally, the rest of the server is not doing its job. Okay, so that's this formula would allow for that situation. So what we want to do is we want to say, no, that's not quite sufficient. We'd rather have some X-ray vision to look at the internal components of the contract in a reasonable fashion. And here's a little picture that describes essentially the intuitions behind the formula. And by the way, this picture is one that I have been showing on these Hangouts for quite some time because it's at the basis of a lot of what we call session types, which guarantee deadlock freedom. It's at the basis of the intuitions about how to make financial contracts balance out so that you have, you don't have the creation of money or you don't have the deletion of money. In other words, no double spend. Right. So this picture basically says if we come in to this contract F this way, then either we can go straight back out or we can go call into this other contract. And then this other contract can either go straight back out or it calls back into this contract. and then around and around and around the loop we go until finally we come out either here or here. And symmetrically, if we come in here first, then the same thing the same sort of thing happens. So this is called the execution formula, and it's a powerful idea for how to be able to have essentially so things that are linear will provide a strongly normalizing or sort of how to say terminating part of this kind of cycle of behavior. So eventually you have to be able to make it out of these loops, right? So that's the core idea, and it turns out that we can actually describe this at the level of types. So we say big R responsive divides the namespaces into two kinds. There's an external namespace and an internal namespace. And then what we say is either, so prime here you can think of as meaning single-threaded. So we have a formula which allows us to describe when a contract is single-threaded. So either the contract has only one thread of execution, and there's a name. Sorry, this should have. Well, let me type. This should have been an in two. Sorry, in one. And either there's a name in the external namespace that it can talk on, and then go back to being responsive. And again, sorry, let me just fix that. This is some typos. We were doing some edits this morning. I'll just fix this really quick. In one, and this is in one and two. Okay, good. So now I'll go back to our regularly scheduled fun. All right. So either there's a name in the external space where it can listen, it can receive a request, and then go back to being responsive, or there's some piece of the process which can talk on the external namespace, so output only. And here's the meaning of this, which is that there's sort of an unbounded number of components. An unknown number of components that are outputting on the external namespace, and there's a component which is responsive, or the system breaks into two components which are talking amongst themselves, but must make progress with respect to the internal namespace, and then eventually start being responsive with respect to the outer namespace or the external namespace. So that matches this thing. So this piece here is the internal namespace where they're looping, and they're not allowed to loop forever. Eventually they have to be able to come out, and that's what this formula describes. So now what you can see the importance of this, right? Always responsive to the outside world, that's a one-liner. But responsive both to the outside world and making sure that there's no internal unresponsiveness is a three-liner. So this is the kind of mechanism by which we are able to write down very, very tight constraints on contracts to make sure that they make progress. This is the kind of thing that we do with RChain, right? This is the kind of work that we're interested in, and this is going. And then to understand the level of scrutiny, and to understand the level of peer or sort of quality control that we're placing ourselves under. This is going in as a submission to one of the highest venues for this kind of work, one of the premier venues for this kind of work. And the steps are, we will have a draft of the paper with a lot of interesting formulae, both liveness kinds of formulae and security formulae. And that draft will go on archive, just like the previous paper where we published the algorithm that generates the type system that allows us to write these kinds of types. So we will publish this investigation of interesting types on archive for all to take a look at, and then it will go as a submission to one of the premier venues for computer science. And that's the kind of quality that we bring to the overall RChain proposal, and I believe that's why investors have been so interested in this approach to the whole effort. So that's fun.
You know, it's beautiful. Actually, I love it every time you do this.
Yeah, well,
Something like this, it just amazes me. It is revolutionary. But the thing is that the people who don't understand this are not going to take our word for it.
right. I mean, the nice thing is that nobody has to take our word, right? That's kind of the point. That's why I put these artifacts. That's why we have artifacts like these discussions in which I unpack it in terms of English. That's why we then have artifacts on the archive so people can read all the technical details.
But they don't understand it, so it doesn't help.
Okay. Well, Ed, you were about to say something.
Oh, I was making a joke. You're going to put programmers out of business, Greg. Think of all that JavaScript that, you know, what are those developers going to do, man?
But this was a beautiful break. It was lovely, and I want to get your feedback on the collaborative document that's been started on the community on AMP voting, and whether
I think I'm really beginning to warm to Vlad's idea of the coin split. I think that's probably the next best non-negotiated settlement. So we just simply do a coin split, and then the investors get both new amps, which I will honor as a conversion to RChain, and they get our coins, and from there we can move forward. If there's no negotiation, I can't believe that the scenario team will provide anything like an attention economy, which has this level of rigor. And so I will be, as I said in the proposals that I've walked everyone through multiple times now, I'm using the attention economy as the implementation that constrains the Rolang development and the RoVM development.
so if the 15-minute meeting is no progress, Vlad's the split approach seems to be the best thing on the table, and
that's correct. That's my next best. So again, if scenario doesn't provide the
now at the beginning of this meeting, we're talking about. At the beginning of the meeting, you were talking about doing polling the AMP holder community. Is that still something that you want to do, or no?
Well, so polling the AMP holder community, I think, is a last resort, and largely just to give an indication of sentiment. You know, what people really want. You know, what I wanted and you saw was a negotiated settlement. And I think everyone saw that. I wanted a negotiated settlement in which we gave a clear signal to investors we have been cultivating that will get us across the finish line. And everyone has been apprised. Everyone within the people who are splitting off from the RChain vision were apprised of that for some time. In fact, I'll tell you a funny story if people want to hear this. Frequently, what would happen when we went and talked to the investor was that I would be kind of time crunched because I needed to be working with the technical team and doing these pair sessions with Gary and Henry. And so I would explain to them in confidence, this is the nature of the the nature of the talks to the investors, because again, I much prefer transparency. It's hard for me to keep secrets in my head. I'm kind of stupid that way. And as a result, I would be doing these pair sessions, driving back from investor sessions. And so what I ended up doing was visualizing the code. And there was a time in late August, early September, where I was actually so into the code that so Gary and Henry were sitting there doing step throughs with IntelliJ. And I was so in tune with the visualization of the code. Before they got there, I said, "Oh, I know what the problem is. You've got a variable. We'd made a change in the code, but we hadn't. We'd introduced an extra variable to do an additional intermediate calculation. But then we didn't utilize the new variable in the output when we returned from the function. We were still using the old variable, and I could visualize it so clearly. I said, "Oh, I know what the problem is. You haven't updated the name of the variable to reflect the new calculation," and that was in fact the problem. So I tell that story to provide a little bit of humor. But also to make sure that everyone knows that I have kept everyone apprised of the plans to engage these investors. So there's no this is not a surprise. This is not there's nothing here where no position that can be taken that no one's ever heard of this investment opportunity. It's quite the contrary. I've kept people within the team very much apprised. So that's where we are in those negotiations. Anything else? Any other questions or concerns?
Greg, yeah, I have one question. Was there ever a point in which Ed, you, Dor, Andy, anyone suggested a new board member on the team?
Oh yeah.
Many times.
Oh, okay, I understand. All right.
Many months ago.
Yeah. I mean, basically, when Dora and I started having problems, we could see that there was going to be an issue if there was ever any contention over how things should be resourced. And I told Dora at that moment, "Hey, I'm getting really uncomfortable about taking people's money without having a board that has an odd number of people on it so that we can resolve these difficulties."
When was that exactly?
Right. So those discussions, I started explaining the issue in late July. And as I said before, Dora was avoiding. And finally, I put my foot down and I said, "No, we really have to talk about this." And in August, he flew up to Seattle and we had some very intense negotiations. At which Ed was effectively the mediator, and Ed was there. He will report that Dor consented to these conditions, and if it hadn't been
before the ICO, then
what's that? That was before the ICO.
Before you agreed to go for the ICO.
Absolutely. It was on the basis of that conversation in which at the end of it, Dor and I hugged and I gave him a ride back to the airport, and we seemed to be on good terms. So I had a very clear indication from Dor that we were in sync on these issues.
Was it
Ed
around
can
that?
testify for that. Can you testify for that?
I would absolutely, hand on the Bible, hand on my look. I don't say things unless I would.
No, I trust you, Greg. I was just asking Ed. Ed was with you, right?
Yeah, I was with them most of that time, except for the drive back to the airport, for example. But Greg, it was around that time that Dor committed to a managing partner structure and put that in Slack. Is that right?
That's correct.
I don't know if it was after that, but I think it was just after that.
It was when he flew back to San Francisco a couple of days after that.
Yes. Okay. And if you restate what you thought the agreement was during that day, essentially, I'm happy to say whether I remembered it or not. But there wasn't present for every bit of it.
So just in the conversation where you and I and Dor sat in your friend's living room.
Yep.
Right at the end of that, Dor had consented to managing partner structure and the revision and an update of the board and daily meetings.
Yeah, and he proposed in writing soon after that a 5-member board, but never were specific names that I heard proposed by Door for 1 or 3 additional board members.
So there you have it. I believe, does that answer your question to your satisfaction?
It does. It does. Yeah.
Okay. So hopefully everyone understands, what my concerns were. I believe that this was in fact, a structural issue with the organization. It made me super uncomfortable. I brought it to Door's attention, to Ed's attention, and then step by step took every single step I could take to resolve the issue.
So the point is that issue was there before the ICO, and you only agreed to it because you were promised that these issues would be addressed in time.
That's correct, but not just that. Not just that I agreed to that they would be addressed in time, but that even after, right, where I was placed in this terrible position, that we had taken money, but we didn't have agreements on how to go forward. I again organized mediation. I mean, there are 2 reasons why I put forward Mukara for as the person to run the mediation, because I knew she would be way harder on me than on Door. One was because Mukara is a long-term practitioner in a meditative practice that is very close to Door's own practice. So I figured that they would be in sync in that way. And 2, because Mukara is one of the world's best professionals in this area, working with Fortune 100 companies, having had success with this kind of process over and over and over again. The Mattel Groovy Girls was a result of Mukara working with Mattel, as an example, right? So that's
when was that mediation? Like when exactly?
The mediation concluded just after the first week in November, and began 6 weeks before that.
So right after the ICO.
That's correct. Yeah.
Right after it ended.
That's correct.
Okay.
So
I don't know what to say. I really.
It's pretty damn serious, dude. Sorry, man. That's not gonna go over well, dude.
I think the best way to go forward for you, Greg, and for everybody is to agree that the ICO, the way it happened, shouldn't have happened. And all that you said and all that's going on the forums and on Slack is enough proof for that.
Okay, so Door is making a claim that the scenario team has made a very clear request for further information relevant to Greg's proposal. So I'm asking, where is that request levied? In what forum, in what venue, and what is the request for information? I know that the only request I heard for information is not, the only request for information that I heard, and I think everyone else heard it, was Henry Till asking for additional technical details. Before or right after I submitted the counter proposal, I reached out to Henry and Gary and I said, would you like to go over any of the technical details? This is a matter of record on the RChain Slack. All right, so I can, and I got no response. The only response I got from Henry was saying that he didn't feel qualified to work on RChain. So that was the only response I got from Henry. In the conversation, Henry asked for technical details. So this is after I submitted to them that if they wanted to review any of the technical details, that please let's sit down and talk about them. And then when Henry requested information, I guess it was Sunday I think it was the Sunday talks when he wanted to go over more technical details. I offered that same day, that was yesterday, to go over the technical details. And as you can see, nothing gives me more satisfaction than going over technical details. So in particular, one of the things that I did at the outset of this discussion was to go over things like technical details. So at the Casper Hangout this morning, I went through the whole row VM proposal with the Casper, the people who came to the Casper stand-up, and fielded a number of different questions about how to do it, why to do it, why I had after analysis rejected the original proposal that I had been contemplating with others about using the OCaml path. So again, sorry for the digression, but I love this kind of stuff. So the original proposal that I had been contemplating was going from the row VM intermediate representation through a series of transforms of the intermediate representation down to the metal via the zinc abstract machine that is part of the OCaml implementation. So the zinc machine was formally verified, and the path from the zinc machine to LLVM was formally verified.
Question, Greg.
Yes.
So while that LLVM doesn't support concurrency, why not start with there, and it'd be a little slower, and then later switch to the other VM?
Because there's the essentially the trade-off is how much is it going to cost us to go that path versus the Rosette path. So let's look at the cost in terms of the different components.
Well, I look at it in terms of time to market or time to realization of a working RChain.
That's right. So that's exactly the analysis that I'm doing. Right. So the analysis is I don't know the zinc machine in and out. I know the Rosette machine in and out. I don't have control over the zinc machine if I find an issue. I have control over the Rosette machine. Right. So it's essentially it's like the path to market that is related to building a software team around this is faster and cheaper with the Rosette machine.
Okay, that helps. Hadn't heard that personally, so it's helpful to hear it. Hey, so I have some other questions relative to.
Well, I just want to finish, right? So I was going down the rabbit hole of saying what I said to the Casper stand-up in order to point out that I am always up for reviewing technical information, and to the best of my knowledge, I have received no formal request for additional information. You saw Andy on the call today. If you think that Andy represented a request from Door or anyone else associated with Door for technical information, please point it out in the video recording. I didn't see it.
I didn't remember technical. I think Andy was saying show an investor commitment in the neighborhood of $8 million, so that's what I heard is the primary outstanding.
Right, exactly. And Ed, you can verify Door was involved in the conversations with the investor. Is that correct?
Oh yeah.
Multiple times, right?
Yeah, but Andy was asking for some current commitment.
No, I understand. I'm just building up to that. So step number 2, did he have clear requirements for moving forward with that negotiation?
Oh, yeah, a clear U.S.-based governance structure and a budget that a whole P&L actually that made sense.
That's exactly right. So everything I've been telling you, you just heard someone testify. So again, it's absolutely critical that people understand. What has happened is Door has been involved in all of those discussions, knows that there's that money on the table, but rather than fix the broken structure, would be happy to throw away that money.
Right. So you mentioned, Greg, that you had written proof or written consent from Door that he agreed to change the board, the number of members, and just what Ed just said, having a U.S. board structure. Can you share that with us?
I absolutely. That will be a part of the next process. So there are some complicating factors. So the complicating factors are these: the first written consent, which was dated before the ICO, was in the Slack history so far back that I'm going to have to go back to the Slack team to see if I can recover that data. I believe that I can, but Ed definitely saw it. I know that MJ saw it. So we have eyewitness testimony.
Hurry, because people are deleting your messages. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, exactly. So it's so far back that I'll have to go to Slack, but there are eyewitnesses to the written consent. But then I also have
Ian can dig that up.
Right, exactly. So there's several eyewitnesses to the written consent. Number two, I do have emails from Door, but they're dated after the ICO, where he consented to fixing the structure.
So some questions, Greg, about protecting value for AMP holders and for equity holders as different actions. I'm concerned about a stalemate with the scenario board, and obviously certain transactions need board approval. So what outstanding resolutions are there that have not been signed, or kind of board level issues that you're aware of, if you don't mind disclosing those?
So the only outstanding, so I've signed all of the board resolutions that were submitted to me with 2 edits. So I showed the community 1 edit that I almost missed. And so there was a resolution included in an omnibus resolution which gave Door sole authority to move all the Bitcoin. And that was through the mining company. I don't remember what it was.
Is it Bitfinex?
No. I can bring it up, but I posted it in Slack so everyone can see.
Okay, so that is still not.
That's not signed.
Not signed.
That's not signed.
Great.
And you said there was another one?
So the other one was related to a U.S. subsidiary under scenario, which was to provide Door a visa into the U.S.
Okay, and so that's okay. So that's not approved by the board. Okay,
that's not approved by the board.
So Door has announced a shareholders meeting. And
good. Well, I think that's the next step from the point of view of the shareholders.
And who are the shareholders then? Because not the people of the BTTF. No?
So there'll be the BTTF, there'll be the NFX and iAngels.
So just to be clear, BTTF is one special purpose company as opposed to all the individual purchasers.
Yeah.
That's correct.
I'm not even sure, where did that message come from? Because I don't see that in the.
I don't see a link.
no, the whole thing is an announcement.
Oh, okay, got it. All right.
Can I just ask, while we had the first Zoom meeting today, Anderson McCutcheon was showing up, and we all thought that he was representing or sent there from Door and the team. Isn't that correct? We all assumed that.
No, there's actually a screenshot. It says I'm Anderson.
Because after he left the Zoom, after his last comment, he left Zoom, and then Door was asked or attacked in Slack, why didn't you show up, Door? You're the CEO. Then he said, I sent Anderson to represent the team. Then Anderson came in with what I pasted further up in our Zoom here, that he said, no, Door, I'm not representing you. I'm representing myself and other shareholders, as many others will do. So he's refusing. He said that he was not joining the first Zoom on behalf of Door and the team. He was there on his own.
Right. So basically what happened was Door didn't show up to the meeting.
Yes, he thought that Anderson was showing up for him, but Anderson had confirmed in Slack that he did not show up for Door. He refused Door's comment. He said, that's not true, Door. I showed up on my own behalf.
Okay, so again, I think what we can see and what I have seen, this is just further evidence of the kind of disconnect and mismanagement.
Yes, it is indeed. He's not living up to being a CEO, not at all.
Right. So again, this is exactly the kind of thing that I've been dealing with and cleaning up messes. So I need people to understand that Door had no planning for the disbursement of the tokens after the crowd sale.
No.
The 3 days, so there was a time tick on the BTTF terms and conditions with Simon Dixon that Simon Dixon made clear to me. There was a clock ticking once the crowd sale continued, and it wasn't until several days after the crowd sale continued that Door dumped into my lap the disbursement of the tokens. He never contacted me before, and only 3 days later did he say, "You have to disperse the tokens." Now, since there was a time ticking on this, and I didn't want people to be in a situation where they were, at loss. Of course, I was forced to respond and to make this happen. I was apprised of the potential legal risk associated with the independent crowd sale page that Door stood up on his own, even after Ed refused to participate in that and told him it was a mistake, and Ian refused to participate in that, to the point where he wouldn't even, provide the web support, and Door had to go out to an independent contractor. By the way, I never approved the SOW for that independent contractor. So he went out to an independent contractor to stand up that sale page.
Crazy stuff.
So then I had to go to I had to go to counsel to see what legal position was, legal guidance was with respect to those tokens. Okay, so then based on counsel's response, I took the steps to disperse the funds.
Yep, I confirm all that.
Okay, and then what happened was again, Scenario owes me money for utilizing the server that was monitored and maintained by myself and the Omni team that helped us oversee the disbursement of the tokens from the sale.
So it looks a little bit to me like this is nothing more than a personal agenda.
This is exactly what I have been trying to document for the community. This is a personal, and what we've seen happen is step by step, Door has consolidated around him people either who are dependent upon him for money, or people who have not disagreed with him.
He's hiding behind them. He's not even surrounded by. He's hiding behind them.
Right. So at this point, I am with everyone else that the next steps are to split the coin.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't work, I believe that. So here's the evidence that I have. Within a few minutes, possibly an hour or so after Vlad posted the split the coin proposal, the price of AMPS went up by 30%. So for me, I take that as signal from the market that is a viable option, and why I'm willing to consider it before the refund. If other people don't, that's fine, and I'm happy to consider that. On the basis of what we have seen, there is plenty of evidence that Door was not proceeding in a manner that was reasonable or sane and in good faith.
Leading up to the ICO, not only after.
That's correct.
So I would just invest all all that I invested in your coin. So I think we should do a refund and let people decide which coin they want to support, right? Let people decide.
Yeah, I think I have to say that I have been given so much support privately from investors saying exactly that I feel quite confident that if every investor understands the facts on the ground in the situation, that they will be happy to go that route. So that's my claim. I want to deliver on the promises to investors. I fundamentally believe that Dora wants to too. I think that our differences really come down to kind of a blow up around philosophy. I think that Dora wants to have this done all very close to the chest and all tightly under his thumb. I really, really want to have this done in a way that it belongs to the people, which means involving the people and galvanizing attention around what's actually going on, rather than
I fear that's not what's going to happen, because there's a meeting that has been called by Dora next week, and there's the third vote of the stakeholders, and I don't know, that sounds to me like a coup, and I'm really concerned.
Well, I mean, I agree with you. It's very, very concerning, and I think it's like one of the things that we have to be prepared for.
Like we only invested as a group of investors because of the great things people say about your tech savvy, things you've done, and we all know that. It wasn't only for you, of course, but you were the main reason why we invested.
Well, I appreciate that statement, and I just want to say, again, it isn't about me. It's about utilizing the math. All I'm doing is analyzing the market requirements as best as I understand them from the guidance of everyone that I've spoken to who has lots of experience in this, and relating it to the mathematics. That's it. So it's not about me. It's about serving the community and getting done what the community wants to get done.
How much Bitcoin do you control from the sale?
So the board controls the board controls the all of it, and that's I don't know how it's apportioned in terms of credit card from BTTF versus Bitcoin. I can't remember the percentages offhand.
Well, two questions about control. There's the mechanics of control, and then there's the I don't know what you call it, legality of control or whatever.
Yeah.
Possession isn't 90% of the law?
No, not in this case. Fiduciary control versus the technical control.
Right, but at least while it's in conflict, it's held, right?
So again, I want to point out, if there's, or let me just ask the community, was there anything that you felt I could have done to move the negotiations forward in good faith? Have I?
Just one more thing you can do is meet within 15 minutes.
Right. So I'm happy to offer that, and I said that in public. But so I'll make sure that that's available.
So does anybody have experience in situations where a new board member has to be introduced to a corporate entity? Because that is what is on the roadmap from Door on Monday. That meeting will be called apparently with shareholders, and there will be considerations on bringing a new board member on board. What's the process? What can that actually look like going forward?
It would be there'll be a nomination for one or more new board members. But so the question is, who has enough shares to affect that? So So it'd be interesting if the cap table could be produced in some form. Maybe it's an abbreviation, but my understanding is that Dor and Greg together form the majority shareholders.
That's correct.
But then what gets really interesting about the question is who's next? Who's the next block that?
So then there's Andy, then there's NFX, and then there's iAngels.
Right. So those positions are generally sympathetic to Dor, I would say.
That's correct.
So in effect, I think that means Dor chooses the next board member. Now time will tell, but that's how I would read it.
I'm not convinced that Andy is taking any side in this. He wants to do both. Right.
I mean, I think that Andy has suggested that that he feels that a higher level of investment in RChain is not something that he supports. The only thing he supports in this is the chicken and egg. So I have to go back with a completely non-starter budget and secure the remainder of the investment. In order for him to back that.
And if a new board is chosen, who is going to decide about the split eventually?
Well, I mean, I think if the new board is chosen, I think it's and it goes with iAngels and NFX and Andy backing Dor, then scenario is basically. It's a coup, as Ed said.
Okay, so again, we're back at one of the fundamental questions that was asked not that long ago, because this sort of negotiation has been only going on for a week. But what happens to intellectual property? Again, IP.
All the IP that has been developed and that is relevant for RChain is in the public domain, and that's part of the reason why I put together all those links and pinned them to the Slack channel, so that everyone can see exactly what the IP is and how long it's been there. You heard Henry say, for example, that the Rosette VM has been developed from 1989 to 1983. The RoCamel VM and implementation was developed from 2004 to 2007. Basically everything was developed by well before I ever met Dor, or laid eyes on Dor, or knew about Dor. So this is there's nothing here, and Casper belongs to Ethereum. So
my hope is that Scenario Limited, one way or another, makes it clear their intent is not to contest any of the IP as being, open source and free to the public, etc. Because just legal fees alone would be quite problematic for Scenario Limited and obviously for others. So it's just not in anybody's interest to go that route.
Right. So again, I just want to repeat my request. Was there anything else I could have done or should have done to help the negotiations continue fruitfully?
Well, Greg, I mean, I've given you feedback in the past. I think that, but they're on sort of these minor points, and I think one area in which I think Dor and you could have shown each other more respect is just around the speed of execution. A lot has happened over the last couple months if we look back at it, and very little time to make some of these decisions. But so I think just a bit more space and time might have helped, including in individual conversations. But the overall arch and some of the root cause issues go back a long, long time. So I understand that you were patient in the larger term at leading up to this. Greg and you, Dor and you did recognize the need for a third board member and a different governance structure a long time ago, and it didn't happen. And that's, I think, one of the core problems. I think another core problem is Scenario Limited is, for profit. Door is very focused on delivering the social attention economy one way or another, and time to market's important for him. And he was less interested in RChain. You, I think, on the other hand, were more interested in RChain being the foundation, certainly, in terms of sequencing, and then attention economy after that. So some of these, I think those include the core differences, and obviously there's other things like managerial style and so forth. I think just a bit more patience with each other in conversations, and not so much defensiveness when talking with each other privately and in public.
Okay, all right. So that's fair, and yeah, I take all that on board. I agree. I wish I could have been more patient.
I mean, I wish I could have been more patient too. Frankly, it was challenging for me to participate and watch.
Yeah, no, I absolutely hear you.
It's also hard for the rest of us to speak up about that, because we don't know everything what has been going on. But well, from what I have seen in Slack and Zoom, I think you've been pretty fair and realistic, and you have at least laid things on the table, whereas Door has just run away.
Yeah. Well, there's, the two sides of this, and I would tend to say, let's take what we can get and just get the rest. Okay, don't look a gift horse in the mouth. This is, Door won this battle with as much as we can get, fine, and we'll go from there.
Well, I agree, Jim.
On the other side of that is my experience bringing in millions of dollars worth of funding on my technical design at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and doing so with a very explicit progress that this is a very ambitious, decentralized network we are building. And unless I have 100% commitment that we're going to spend the money to develop this product, I do not want to be involved in it. Okay, and we got tons of funding, and then other professors got the money that they wasted and produced nothing, and I ended up with all the responsibility for all the deliverables and a small part of the money. And I ended up maintaining 15,000 lines of code by myself in the end, and I had to abandon the project. So from that experience, I have to say what Greg is doing is absolutely correct, because I don't want him to end up where I ended up.
Right.
But the situation is different.
I was just going to say that this is clearly a problem that was there before the ICO was announced, and that was hidden. There was a mission to the investors, and regardless of how it goes next Monday, I think in this shareholders meeting, I think investors have the right to get their money back, because that's not what they bought, what they invested in. Don't you think so, Jim?
Because I was at the weekly meetings where these issues have been brought up, going way back, particularly in August, and the potential solutions were given, and they were satisfactory. Okay. So everyone knew about the problems. They knew about the solutions. They were happy with the process going on. It wasn't secret at all.
And Roger, may I add to your point as well? So Jim kind of put out there the public, what's available in the public domain, what's available on video footage, what's available on technical documentation. However, Greg said there was a mediation process. Now, that is a confidential situation.
Oh, remember the mediation process happened after the ICO.
Oh, I thought it happened before the ICO in August.
No. So Ed and Dor and I met in August, and Dor and I kissed and made up, and I got an agreement from Dor that the changes that I wanted so that we wouldn't be facing these problems were to be effected.
Okay, it's still verbal agreements.
No, he actually put it in writing.
Oh, that's okay.
Right. So then after that, after putting it in writing, the ICO happened on the strength of those interactions and the written consent.
Right. And that is exactly the problem.
Right.
Even if the mediation sessions were afterwards, the problem was already there.
That's correct. So the problem existed, and I told Dor it made me sick to my stomach to go to investment without these things, and that's why he agreed. And I feel now that I was lured into using my good name to gather people's money. And
exactly. That phrase alone is the proof that investors who want to, not everybody will do that, they should get the refund if they wanted to. Because that we were lured just as you were.
So, Roger, are you referring to Bank to the Future campaign, or the scenario sale page, or otherwise?
But both.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, I think to be fair, people who bought on BTTF, they spent some, I don't know what the fees were for credit cards. We could just say, okay, who was on the ICO directly with Bitcoins? There's fees, but they're minimal. There's also fees on the BTTF. Those people should get a refund. I bought on Poloniex as well. I'm not expecting to get anything from there because I bought from other people on an exchange. The same way I lost money with other coins. But when I have a website by a company which is incorporated, and I buy from them, then if I realize there was something already there that was omitted, was hidden from me, and as Greg said, it made him sick to go on with that. That's clearly proof enough that something was wrong and that should not have happened. And I feel fooled, and I know a lot of people feel fooled, and I'm 100% sure if a refund is not offered, that's a sign of ill intent. It's not a sign of good faith, and I'm sure there will be huge problems. And I regret to say that, Greg, but there's going to be something that is going to fall in your lap, and I don't want to see that. I think you have great things to do, and there will be things happening to you, especially because you're in the U.S. So I think we should all, we should push for a refund for those who want it. If there's a coup, even though Greg, you did the right thing, you put everything on the table, you were open, and that's what we needed back then. Otherwise, we wouldn't have invested. If still there's a coup and you're put out of the company, you're thrown away, then Dor just did what he wanted. He lured you, he used your name, and got the money, and then now gets rid of you, and that's it.
Yeah, I agree. If there's a coup, and people should be able to get their money back, or keep, their amps and or get RChain tokens.
Right, Jim. They should have the choice. That's
only a split is a viable option. And I think in January it was already known that the BTTF was not such a good plan, and also the NFX program was not such a good idea.
That's correct. So Dor and I had a fairly significant discussion about NFX, and I did not feel that it was the right direction for the company to go. But I consented, and I said, Dor, do that, and I will be focusing on developing the tech. So I know that Anderson was in the mix here, at least as a listener.
I don't know if that was the Anderson we were talking to earlier.
No, let's see. Let me take a look. I just saw that.
No, I meant Anderson McCutcheon.
Oh.
Anderson.
So there's your name is Anderson?
No.
So there's someone called Anderson in the Zoom channel right now.
Yeah, and that's not the person I referred to earlier as Anderson. I meant Anderson McCutcheon.
Right. Okay. So anyway, so I want to be clear that it is out of respect to investors and out of respect to Door and the people who are supporting Door that I have brought these issues to light and that I'm continuing to have these discussions so that people can be apprised clearly and unequivocally of all of the statements that I have been making so they understand the import and the significance of the statements. And there is no ill intent or disrespect meant at all. Even when I have described Door's actions as being inappropriate, it's so that we can take effective action. We can rectify those mistakes and take effective action so that everyone can get the best outcome possible. It is my firm belief that the only way to have good outcome is first to own up and admit mistakes and then take steps forward. This is why I came forward with my discomfort about going forward with the crowd sale. I realize now that I should have gotten in writing with a signed legal document Door's intent more than just having it in writing in electronic communications. I should have had him.
That's enough. That's I can assure you, Greg. That's more than enough.
What's more than enough? The electronic communications?
Yes, today it's more than enough. And there's eyewitnesses, as you said, right?
Mm-hmm.
Dad was there, so that's more than enough.
So, again, the point is, I realized that I should have been more diligent on making sure that those intentions were expressed and legally binding to the point that Door understood precisely the nature of them and why, and the import both legally and in terms of the investment that we, all three of us, Door, Ed, and I, were pursuing with the other investor. So my intent here is not to badmouth Door or badmouth the people who are supporting Door. My intent is to lay bare all of the facts so that effective action can be taken and everything can be given the due consideration and the right path chosen forward. I feel clean inside. I don't feel anxious. I don't feel I don't feel that I have done anything ethically, morally, or legally wrong.
No, but that's. I think all of us in here now we understand that, and we know you like that. That's who you are. We don't doubt that at all. I'm absolutely sure about that. I think, unfortunately, you have been. I think you're a little bit like myself. You believe the best in people, but you just didn't maybe see clearly that Door is a cool businessman, or he's very shrewd in his ways, maybe. And that's not going very well with your mentality of inclusiveness. And, yeah, how can I say?
I think you. We all understand your position, Greg, and we all know you actively to open everything to us, and I really appreciate that. We all do. But the company did the crowdfunding, and you're part of the company, and I'm sure there will be some legal problems if you don't give the investors who were misled the opportunity to claim a refund.
Right. So I'm going to take every step that I possibly can to make sure that the refund happens under the assumption that there's not a sufficient interest to go forward with the coin split. I believe that if there is sufficient interest to do the coin split, then again everyone can be made whole, and then the win is that if Door magically materializes an attention economy through some other path, great. Then I was able to deliver on my promises to investors via proxy. However, it also gives me the opportunity to pursue the plans that I've laid out for everyone to see in public for the last 2 years, and make sure that investors get their money's worth.
But I'm just afraid that the Door is up to something that he's not telling you, because at when was it, 8:44, so almost half an hour ago, he said directly in Slack, because people were jumping on him and demanding answers, what he's doing and what he's not doing. And then he said, at time 44, he said specifically, this will all be resolved soon. And nothing more than that. And that's after they were discussing this with a shareholder meeting and NFX and BFF and there hasn't been any more comments from him since.
Well,
so I think he's brewing on something with shareholders. He simply want you out of the board.
The coin split. What about all the amps that are still not in the wild? There's still the 92% which are.
Yeah, I was thinking about that, Roger. One thing that could happen in the coin split, I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's a program of how amps would be sent to a non-spendable address, and another program to pick those up and to create issuance on other accounts. So one way that could happen is that program could exclude, the scenario treasury addresses, for example. So I think there are parameters that could be played with.
Do you think they're going to agree with that?
I think the coin split is largely up to Greg, and it's not it's not a scenario board decision. Now it's an interesting question. It's a very interesting question.
I don't know if you follow Slack, but Door just said that no, Greg refused to meet with us privately today. We've decided to take the next step now, and this will all be resolved soon.
Well, I assume he's referring to the board meeting or the shareholder meeting next Monday.
Maybe he is. Yeah.
Just for the record, my primary complaint about Door is that he failed to meet regularly with Greg.
Yeah.
The single most pointed recommendation I've made to him, and where I fault him the most, I don't fault him much for his overall intent. His overall intent is to make shareholder value, to bring about the attention economy and so forth, and a lot of differences of opinions about how to do that. But I did fault him for not meeting regularly.
Yeah, that's also my impression. He's not up to confrontations, or I don't know.
Well, I mean, it's not pleasant for anybody, but it's his and Greg's duty to work through these issues.
Yes, and I don't believe that there is any legally binding reason to meet privately as opposed to meet here. There's no legal binding reason. I have been willing to. What I have discovered is in the private meetings they end up being non-productive, whereas in the public meetings there's enough decorum and other pressures that they end up being much more productive.
So I have a question. A meeting between chiefs. If I'm a chief and you're a chief and we have a private meeting, and it's really tricky because we're in a decentralized, transparent, whatever, should I necessarily be saying in public what I have disclosed to you in a private meeting because we're board members? Because I'm thinking like, okay, it's like you press the CEO for a meeting. You let's say you had a meeting and then you gave an update that there was no progress. Like, does that help? Would that have helped in any capacity get us so that we have not, so we wouldn't have arrived in this situation. Because I mean, we've met weekly on Hangouts. There's been vibrant discussions for many months about governance, blah blah blah, in the Slack, in private with yourself, developers, all of that. But at the end of the day, when a chief meets another chief in a corporate entity, is it up to them? Like, how? It's so confusing, dude. Like, it's so ridiculous.
All I can say, Christian, is I've met with Door privately again and again and again and again and again. It's not like I have any evidence that when Door says something privately, it holds later. That's been my concern, right? That's the issue that I have been facing, because Door said things to me privately where Ed was present. It was just the three of us, and then put it in writing with just the core team, and then backed away from those positions. So meeting privately doesn't make it stick. That's my concern. That's why I can't meet privately.
I don't think we have any backups of private channels on Slacky. So it's probably gone.
That's okay. I've got eyewitnesses. So Ed and Ian can both testify to the fact that Door made this. Malthus John remembered also the same thing. So under testimony, he will find that is correct. And can you confirm this?
That Door committed to, for example, adding board members and managing partner. Is that what the question is? Yes.
That's the question. Yes.
And that he didn't follow through with that over a period of many months. Yes.
Thank you. So this is the issue, right? And I just want it to be on tape, on record, right? And it was because Door made these promises that I went forward with the crowd sale. Being optimistic, I went forward with the crowd sale because Door made these promises, both in front of eyewitnesses, in private, and in writing on private Slack channels. And then later confirmed it in email. That the fact that he's not doing this now is and only doing this to produce an event in which he's removing me from the company, if that is in fact what can happen, is why it is so important for me to meet in public, because it doesn't stick when it happens in private.
Right. I think you should go after these Slack messages, Greg, just to make sure you have that on your side,
Okay.
on top of eyewitnesses.
Okay. I'm happy to do so.
Yeah, they are hunting Door right now in Slack.
It seems pretty clear what's going to happen. I mean, from this point on, given the announcement, given what Door's posted in the announcement channel, I mean, it doesn't take much imagination to the shareholders meeting. Shareholders are going to elect another board member who's going to side with Door and give him the necessary majority to remove Greg from the board. I mean, that seems the way that looks like the way that things are going to unfold, right, from this point.
Certainly possible.
The question is there anything that can be done, in the meantime?
Well, I think what's super important now is to get the message out. If you believe that I have represented faithfully and accurately everything that has happened, please let every other investor and stakeholder in this know. Because at that point, and also let them know that I will continue with RChain. So if they want to recoup their investment, if they want to make sure that the thing they were funding is the thing that is delivered, then there is a path forward. But with Scenario, there is no actual path forward that I can see. The last thing I heard from back channels is that Door was considering another research project which has nothing like the kind of peer review as a means to make an appearance that he's got some alternative in the wings. And you can go and do the due diligence on that research project if you want. But again, the most important thing is that it constitutes a bait and switch. It is absolutely in no way related to the technical approach that I have been outlining for the last 2 years. So
That's white paper, right?
yeah, that's correct.
We all bought and invested in.
Yeah, that's correct. So what is important, I think, is to let everyone know far and wide your view on what has happened, what's transpired, and whether or not you feel in your best assessment that I have represented the events, and that the best path forward is to work on the path that investors invested in, because I will make that path available for people who want to do that.
And I don't think the coin split will be that clean, because there'll always be some tricks that could be done with the outstanding amps. I don't think that would be the cleanest way to do that. I think people should get their money back and have the chance to invest where they wanted to. And yeah, that's RChain for many of us.
Okay.
To echo Roger, right before we go into refund, Door is claiming that there's going to be a shareholder meeting. Greg, in your experience dealing with corporate entities, or anyone else in this room, when a shareholder meeting is called, is it a private meeting, or is it going to be a public meeting like we're having now?
I'm sure that he's going to make the venue be private.
And one other thing to clarify, who is invited to that meeting in terms of being a shareholder? Do you need to own equity? Exactly who will be invited to that meeting in your assessment?
Well, right now, so far, Door hasn't officially invited me to anything. So if there is a shareholder meeting and I'm one of the largest shareholders, that's going to be an interesting question.
Well, it sounds like there's a lot to chew on, and there's no clear next meeting or process to move forward.
Well, yeah, and again, so here's the process that I'm asking everyone to engage in. Please let everyone know what you have understood me to be saying. If there's any investor out there who wants to understand the position that I've taken and why I've taken it, please let them know that I am available, and I am very concerned for anyone who continues with Door. I need to state this unequivocally. At this point, based upon what we have seen of Door's actions, I feel quite certain that your investment is going to be at risk, because we've seen what's going on, right? I was lured into into going through with the crowd sale, and now this is what's happening. There's no way, in hindsight, if what goes forward with the crowd sale, with the shareholder meeting is what David summarized, then we have a post facto expression of intent, and that intent was that Door never intended to do what he said. And as a result, I was lured into lending my good name and my good work, so that Door could get funds to do something else. So please.
So it seems like the only recourse at this point it would be to prove, deliberate negligence or deception by the CEO, because we don't have any at the moment. AMP holders don't have any legal recourse. We have no recourse apart from making a lot of noise but and then it,
Actually, you do have a recourse.
in terms of process, Door is holding all the cards at the moment.
Actually, that's not correct, right? If there is another coin on the market, and I suppose that's something I could do right now. If I put another coin on the market and make it available, if you're an AMP holder, you could trade all your AMPs for those coins, and then the AMPs could be dumped. They could, they could be burned. They could be sent to another. They could be sent to a burn address. So that would be a clear expression of preference.
That would be very risky.
It would be risky because without the AMPs to redeem, but it would be a clear expression of preference because then there would be no value for the AMP.
Well, Greg, why exactly do you need to do it? Because I mean, if the AMP holders they could create an omni asset right now and say I'm accepting AMPs for this asset, correct? You don't actually have to do it yourself. You don't have to walk that path alone.
Well, I think it has to do with chain of custody, right? There has to be some indication that there's a relationship between that coin and the work that's going to go on in RChain.
Right. That is a big factor, yeah.
Again, I sort of need to move to some other things now. I'm wondering if anyone has any thoughts about additional recourse.
It's only a question of whether we want to make AMP voting a priority, and I think that was negative.
Okay.
So today is Monday, correct? Yeah. So our next scheduled meeting was supposed to be Wednesday at 2 p.m. EST, 11 a.m. PST. Is that still in effect, or how are we operating?
Yeah. So if by 11 a.m. PST Door doesn't come forward with an alternative, then I must begin the action of seeking a refund for the investors, anything that's fair and equitable.
Hey, Greg, this is Ian. How safe are the funds that have been collected in the investment?
Well, I mean, you have to ask yourself that, right? You've seen Door's steps. How safe are they?
Is there anything that you can do to help freeze those accounts so that he won't be able to spend before this is resolved?
I have taken every step I can to freeze the accounts until this matter is resolved.
Okay.
How did you split? Like, did you send some BTC to Bitfinex, to exchanges? How did that work?
Correct. That's correct. The funds were released to Bitfinex, and some of the funds have gone into the bank account.
The USD that came from BTTF went to the bank account, and the BTC went to Bitfinex.
That's correct. That's my understanding to date.
And the Bitfinex account, does it require your consent to be moved around, or the money there to be sold, the BTC to be sold for US dollars? Can they unilaterally just withdraw that from there?
No, none of that. There was a board resolution to. Oh, sorry. Are you asking about the accounts or the Bitfinex?
Right.
Which one?
The BTC, or yeah. So the BTC you gathered in the ICO, you sent to Bitfinex, right?
Right. Exactly. So there was a board resolution that nearly got past my attention, where it was amongst an omnibus set of resolutions, where it gave Door sole discretion to move the funds in Bitfinex.
Oh, really?
And yes. And I posted that in Slack multiple times. Here, I'll just grab it for you.
But did it pass?
No, of course it didn't, because it came to my attention, so I stopped it.
Thank God. So can you like look up that account, access that account, access that account?
So I don't have the addresses. Look, I've done my level best to trust Door in these things and to not have to attend to all of this, because as you can see, the scope of the work that I'm doing is very demanding. And
I know.
I needed not to have to worry about that or think about that. So 1 second here.
But now we do have to. Right. So maybe we should. You should contact Bitfinex and let them know about that, because funds might be being moved around already under these.
Right. So this was in fact a concern that Craig Sellers mentioned to me. Hang on 1 second. Here we go. I will copy and paste the resolution for everyone to see. So this is the Cumberland Mining Company. So here's the resolution. So via the Cumberland Mining Company, Door gets sole discretion to move funds around.
Did you paste it somewhere?
Yeah, I pasted it in the chat.
All right. Okay. Now I see it. And that has not passed.
It did not pass. What I did was Door. It turned out to be in my favor. The method that we've been using for me to execute documents is I have sent a PDF and a JPEG of my signature to Door and to Gal, the director of finance. And then we do an email exchange in which I consent to signing the document, and Gal attaches my signature to the document. Door did not want to do that in the case of this document. So when he sent it back, but I was having troubles with Adobe Acrobat actually performing the process. So he did it and then sent it back to me for confirmation. When I went to double check that the document that was that had my signature attached was in fact the document that I had consented to, my eye fell upon that resolution, and I hadn't read it in the light of the existing discussion or the existing context, and then I realized that the language was overbroad. And so I purchased a copy of the professional version of Acrobat and excised that and executed it.
Right.
So I signed everything that stood in the way of us performing our legal duties with respect to moving the funds, and that's. But apart from that, I didn't allow there to be overly broad discretion for Door.
So you have actually no idea whether they've moved the funds already around to other accounts on Bitfinex or other wallets?
I have no visibility into that process. So if he has done so, it's been without my approval, which means it's been without board approval.
Right. So
so if anyone sees transactions in which that's happening, then they should definitely document it.
So you can't really know what's going on Bitfinex, right? You cannot backtrace.
No, I can't at this point.
So what we should do is to make sure that you send an email with your professional email, your scenario email to Bitfinex, and that's gonna pretty much catch their attention that this is something serious going on. It's not just people writing to them. It's you, like part of the company, asking to freeze the funds. So I think you should do that as soon as possible. Contact them.
Okay. I had Craig Sellers reach out to them already in the event that this might happen. So they're prepared for the possibility of this communication. So I will. Cool.
Great. I have to go now. So yeah, like everybody's saying, you have our support, and let's get as many people on our side as possible. And yeah,
I think just if anyone can just reach out and tell this side of the story, I think that's the most important thing. I think there probably should be several members of the press who would be interested in the story.
Right. And I think you should make your voice heard by writing to Bitfinex and by doing that too, because yours is the strongest. We're just going to support you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. All right, guys. Well, that's where we are. So please have a good rest of your week. So that people know, tonight I leave for New York. I will be speaking with Jake and Alex of Coin Fund on Wednesday. When I return, then I am booked to go to Nairobi to present at the Koala workshops, and so there will be a little bit of an issue with respect to attending the shareholder meeting, as Dor knows. So that's another thing that he's done.
And did you know you weren't going to be available? Was that
Greg made me aware of the Nairobi meeting back in the beginning of September. So Dor is very, very aware of what he's doing.
And he called the stakeholders meeting right there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That is the intention that I'm seeing, because Greg and I have been talking back and forth about this Kenya thing for quite some time. So
we need to put that on Slack and say, hey, you cannot call a stakeholders meeting right when you know one of the board members, and when there's only two, you know that he's not going to be available. That's gonna really go against him in court. That's really dumb. We should still tell him that.
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, please feel free to express this.
Well, right. You should be the first one to say to respond to the announcement saying that you're not available at that time. That you should change it.
Yeah, I will do. But people should be, people should, at this point, I think having people come forward in support of what's going on is going to have a lot more effect. All right, guys. I got to jump off. Ciao for now.